Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, and I'm here with attorney Alex Palamara. And today we're going to talk about long term disability claims, and specifically, we're going to talk about the occupation of physician assistants. Now, Alex, I know you've represented a lot of physician's assistants throughout the country. Also, very helpful that your dad is a doctor, so you have even grew up with the knowledge of the medical field and what's required in that job. But when it comes to physician's assistants, it's actually, it's a broad category because there's physician's assistants now in not only in the office like people think about when they go to their general doctor, but they're also in the operating room. They're in surgical centers. They're in ERs. They're in all different fields. I mean, they're basically not quite the amount of education as a doctor, but just below that education and a long road, highly educated, a well paid job right now, so a high wage earner, and a lot at stake when someone files a disability claim. So, the first thing, since we're focusing here on occupation for physician's assistants, is how do you see most disability carriers define the occupation of a physician assistant within their policies?
Okay, well, first things first. I mean, I kind of see PAs almost as doctors, essentially. Whenever I take my kids to the doctor, or the PA that worked with my dad, who's a doctor, as you said, I mean, they're essentially doctors, a lot of what they do on a day-to-day basis. Like you said, they're highly educated, highly qualified, hardworking people. And some people have group disability insurance policies. If they work for a group or a hospital, they could have a group disability insurance policy. Some PAs go out and buy their own policies, which are individual disability insurance policies. The definition of disability is kind of similar in both. In an individual policy, you can have one that's specific to your job, specific to being a PA. In a group policy, sometimes it could be specific to your job for a certain amount of time that it can go to any occupation. But for the most part, the definition of disability is: are you able or unable to perform the material and substantial duties of your own occupation as a PA, essentially?
And so, what does that really mean when you dig into it? And what I mean by that is, I talked about you could have somebody who's a surgical physician assistant and somebody who is a physician assistant in the office, probably different types of duties. Are they going to
For
have
sure.
to, is their definition of disability going to be viewed the same by the disability carrier?
Depends on the policy. Now, under the group policies, it's probably going to be defined as your occupation as it's performed in the national economy. A lot of insurance companies like to take that definition and say it's how a PA is done generally, not how it's done at your specific location, your specific job. You as a PA in the ER, you as a PA in the OR, or you work in the cardiovascular field, or you work at a pediatric physicians group or whatever. They're probably looking at it as done generally. Sometimes the policy can get more specific and say how you're actually performing it or what your qualifications are. Individual disability insurance policies kind of get more specific for the most part. Not always, but sometimes they can be more specific to your actual job duties, what you're doing on a regular basis, whether it's in the ER, OR, or whatever it may be.
And how would you, when you're representing a physician assistant, how do you go about proving what their occupational duties were at the time they were working?
So a few things you can do. You can reach out to their employers if they have an employer. Some of them could be contractual employees, but if they have an employer that they work for, there could be a description of what their job duties are. I mean, most employers have that when they're trying to hire somebody, or even after the fact tell you what your job duties are. There could be a job description that your employer has. If that's not available, you can look towards the national economy. You can look online to see how a job is defined or how a job, ORPA might be defined. If worse comes to worse, sometimes I even ask my clients, hey, write down a page or two what you do on a daily basis. What your requirements are, what you're doing hour to hour basis, what it may be on a 40-hour work week, or you probably work longer hours than that, what your job is. So there's different ways you can look at it. You can ask the employer, you can ask your actual client or yourself as a PA, or you can look towards the national economy, look online as well. So there's different ways to prove what the requirements are of the job when reaching out to the insurance company.
Now, from your experience in representing PAs, usually, we encounter this national economy standard of definition of disability, which means it's not necessarily how you performed your job for your employer, but it's how it's performed in the national economy. And I usually see that they're classifying physician's assistants as more of a light to possibly medium duty, It would be completely wrong to classify them as sedentary because they're clearly on their feet for more than 2 hours a day to see patients or whatever they're doing. But what do you do about the physician assistant who's working in the hospital and is basically on their feet all day? And also the physician's assistants who say, look, I have patients who come in who are 200 pounds and sometimes I got to move them or, do whatever has to be done in order for me to treat them. And if I can't lift more than, 200 pounds, then there's no way I can do my job. However, the disability carrier says, well, that's not what we think it is in the national economy. So how do you make the argument to get around that?
You have to prove the truth to them. The truth will set you free. You have to prove to the insurance company that this person's job has this requirement. They're not this type of PA, they're this type of PA. There's these requirements for this occupation. Look at the definition of disability in the policy. Sometimes there's an opening there to say, they try to always fall back in the national economy, but that sometimes is, for lack of a better term, BS. Because the policies never say national economy. For the most part, they don't say, we look at the national economy. Sometimes they say national economy definition of disability from the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, but for the most part, I never really see in the policy something that says Dictionary of Occupational Titles. It might say national economy, but that's generally it. But there's case law out there that says they can't just say PA in general or this occupation in general or that occupation in general. They have to take a look at your specific requirements of your occupation because, it just would be unfair not to be, for lack of a better term. So you have to prove to the insurance company what your duties are, back it up with statements from your employer, statements from your manager, statements from the doctors that you work for, to prove to them that this is not a run-of-the-mill PA or run-of-the-mill, that you're not just some glorified nurse. You have to get above and beyond that and prove that to the insurance company.
So we talked a little bit here about occupation and how important it is to prove your specific occupation. But I want to shift gears a little bit about the other element that is super important in a disability claim, which is proving your medical condition. And unfortunately, we represent a lot of doctors and a lot of physician assistants that they have chronic medical conditions, they have it for years, and they don't like to go see another doctor because for the most part, they kind of know what's wrong with them, whether, a diagnosis from a while ago or they spoke to a colleague and they didn't document what was going on. How important is medical documentation in order to get a long-term disability claim approved?
It's the most important thing. There's no way you can prove your claim without proof. And proof is in the form of medical documentation. And it goes back to the old adage, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So even though you might be feeling, you're working as a PA, you're on your feet 20 hours or whatever, 10 hours a day, and you get home and you can barely walk, and throughout the day you're in pain throughout the day, but no one knows that pain but you. And there's no way to prove your pain or prove that your allegations of pain are actually there unless you have diagnostic measures that you're seeing your treating providers. And you can't just write your own medical reports either. You have to go out to see another doctor. But proof. That's the only way you can prove your claim is with proof. And without proof, you're going to get nowhere. So if you call the insurance company and say, hey, I'm a PA, I know what I'm suffering from. I'm suffering from a herniated disc or this, that, and the other. They're going to say, okay, I'd love to take your word for it, but we can't just trust anybody. We need the proof. So you have to see your doctor. And my dad has probably not seen a doctor, and I don't even know how many years. So there's probably no medical documentation for my father. And I think maybe it's someone in the medical industry. Maybe it's just a thing. You just talk to your colleagues. You don't have to go actually see doctors or make appointments. But in this certain scenario, if you want to make a disability claim, you have to have proof, and you have to start compiling your proof and seeing the doctors on a regular basis even before you stop working, or at least when you stop working, you need to start seeing a doctor immediately so you can start building your record to prove your claim with the insurance company. It's so important.
Right. Well, preparation is everything, and I would never recommend to stop working and then see a doctor because then you got almost no chance of getting approved. And if you have a chronic condition, you need to see not maybe one doctor, but 2 or 3 doctors and document everything that's going on. And probably if you can hang on that much longer because you may have waited too long, excuse me, you have to go over a couple months, if not longer, of treatment to really get a documentation. Because if you don't, the disability carrier is going to say, well, did you try any therapy? Did you try any medication? Did you try any procedures? Now, not a surgical procedure, but maybe a cortisone injection, maybe some new procedure that came out or some type of therapeutic procedure that takes a while. The whole gamut of different medical conditions. It just depends what you have. But unless you're in a real severe accident or wake up with a catastrophic or a horrible disease type injury or illness, you have to have preparation in a period of medical documentation, or your claim just isn't going to get approved. And then we've done a lot of videos about how important medical support is, how to document your medical records, and I really encourage the physician assistants who are watching our videos to go to our website, look up your disability insurance company, and then look to the specific type of case you have, whether you're applying, you're appealing, you're denied, and take some of the tips that we're giving to determine what you really need to support your claim. But the best thing I can give is it's preparation and it's communication. I mean, even Alex, communication with the doctors, because it's not enough just to go, hey doctor, I want to file for disability. You got to know how they're doing their medical records. You got to know how they're filling out the attending physician statements. Your doctor has to be aware that disability company is going to call them. And there's so many different factors that go on that physician assistants really need to be aware of. Now, Alex, the last thing I want to talk about is what's the scenario that's available and a strategy I recommend where a person can become residually disabled. How would they go about doing that instead of just stopping work altogether and being what's called totally disabled?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that proof, again, if you have your proof lined up, the quicker that you can get your claim approved. Because if you stop working altogether, you have no income coming in, and you're waiting for the insurance company to approve your claim. So when you file your claim, if you've gone to the doctor for multiple, for months and months and months, and you have a stack of papers showing that you're suffering from this and it's only gotten worse and worse, and now you're ready to file your claim, the quicker the insurance company will approve your claim, so the quicker you'll be without income coming in, or the quicker that your income will start again. Now, a residual claim, most disability insurance policies have what's known as residual disability, which means that you're kind of able to work part-time or less hours, but you can't work the full amount of time, and thus your income is suffering, because no employer is going to pay you 100% of your salary if you can only work 30% of the time or 40% of the time. So they allow you to get residual disability benefits, which is a partial disability insurance claim essentially, and you can get paid a percentage of your loss of earnings. And again, you support a residual disability insurance claim the same way you support a total disability insurance claim, and it's with proof as well. But in this scenario, you're going to have to also show what your hours that you're working are, what your income is, and whatnot. So there's going to be a bunch of calculations to figure out how much the insurance company actually has to pay you.
And the thing I really like about a strategy, if somebody can do this, and again, they have to be in a situation where their employer will let them cut back on their hours, they have to suffer at least a 20 or 25% loss of income, is that it shows the disability company to say, look, yes, I'm in pain, yes, I have limitations, but I want to try to work with those the best I can. I know I've been trying, but it got to the point now where I think maybe if I cut back, maybe I can work in this capacity. And if you can, great, you'll get some income replacement for what you're losing. If you can't, what you've done is you've shown to the disability company to say, look, I worked for 6 months, 12 months, in a limited capacity. I'm still suffering. I can't do it. And that's why now I want to transition to total disability. So you take away that argument, you take away that argument.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, finish up. It gives you a level of credibility for sure.
Yeah.
It says, listen, I was trying to make it so that you guys didn't have to pay me that much money. I was trying to see if I can get better by working limited hours. So I was trying to do you guys a favor. I could have made a total disability claim 6 months ago, 9 months ago, or a year ago, but I didn't, to save you guys money. So it gives you a level of credibility and say, now I can't do it, so you have to pay me the full money now. And if they say no, we have great arguments to fight them, because it's kind of a BS denial in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's a good strategy that we can obviously discuss with any physician assistant who's considering that. It doesn't always work, but it's not mentioned a lot, and it's an easier road to claim approval if you think you can still do some work. So again, we have lots of videos on our website. We most importantly encourage you to call Alex or call myself. We always offer a free initial consultation. We're available to represent you anywhere in the country. We welcome you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because Alex and all of our lawyers, we're putting out these videos every week to provide helpful tips for claimants so that you can avoid claim denial if you're on claim, and to helpful tips to get you approved. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch our video, and we'll be there for you if you need us. Thank you.